So what is communication? How can we define communication? I realize there may be many definitions of communication, but we will focus on a definition that actually builds on the notion that it is a process. Communication is a process. Now, what kind of process is it? If we consider the root of the word in its Latin origin, comunicare, means to share. So it is a process of sharing. Process of sharing. So what do we share when we communicate? We share words, ideas, different beliefs, opinions. So if we talk about the process of sharing, we talk about the process of sharing ideas, thoughts. And of course these are carried by words, by our verbal expression. So communication is a process of sharing words, ideas. But that would not be enough. Now we have to not only communicate and share words and ideas, but we have to understand what we share. And so communication is therefore a process of sharing words, ideas, in a commonly understandable or understood ways. If I talk to someone in a different language, it may be called communication, but it does not certainly serve the purpose of communication. Although I do share words and thoughts and ideas, if it's not understood, then the communication lacks its power, its purpose. So communication is a process of sharing words, ideas in a commonly understood ways. If we talk about a communication model, we need to realize that we need to be very simplistic. Communication is a complex process, but to be able to define different elements of communication, now we have to go down to a simplistic, simplified model and talk about person A, person B, the relationship between person A and person B as in the communication environment. So we have person A who is the encoder. We have person B who is the decoder. Person A and person B, of course, are theoretical figures. In reality, we have communication that is that's performed in different environments with different amounts of people. But as I already said, for the simplicity purposes, we will be dealing with the diagram, the chart in this way. So we have person A, we have person B. Person A is an encoder. Person B, is a decoder. Person A needs to be motivated to encode something, and so if you want to say something, then what precedes your words is a motivation, is a desire. Why do you say what you say? What motivates you? What is the stimulus? Is it from the inside? Is it from the outside? So first, even before any word is sounded, comes motivation, comes stimulus. We need to be stimulated to be able to say something, to be able to react, to do something. And so we have the stimulus on both sides. We have the person A who is who has stimulus or stimulated, and we have person B who is stimulated. Person A is maybe stimulated by something internal, something that comes from the external environment, whereas person B also is stimulated by what person A says or by different factors as well. Person A is the one who we also call the encoder. what does it mean that he is encoded? That means that whatever message that you have to say, or that you wish to say, needs to be encoded. You put a different code to something. If you want to say it, if you want to transmit something, then you actually put different code to it and hope that the receiver is the one who has enough decoding capabilities to be able to decode that message that you sent to person B. So we have encoding, person A dealing with encoding, and person B dealing with the decoding of the information. So correspondingly, we speak of encoders and decoders. Decoders are those who are the receivers of information. They need to have decoding mechanisms in order to understand and thus fulfill the basic purpose of communication, and that is to be that the communication is to be understood. So when we talk about the communication, we also need to give due attention to what we call frame of reference. Now, frame of reference is something that's very important to notice and to mention. Frame of reference is the system or set of everything that exists around you as communicator. When you communicate, you bring to your communication your education, your past experiences, you bring to the communication model your intelligence, your temperament. So everything that exists, your background, everything that exists with you, everything that has ever determined the way you communicate, that determines the way you are, we can call the frame of reference. So if we have two people who are involved in a communication, each of them bringing their own frame of reference, then we have two frames of references meeting in this simplistic model. If we have frames of references that do meet, then one of the common myths or fallacies that people believe is that people have identical frames of references, and that is not true. Actually, in communication, there is this. This is quite a serious principle that's been upheld, and it's that there are no identical frames of references, because each is unique. Each of us is unique. Each of us has different environment, different experiences, different genes, different temperament. We'll talk about temperament in our other lectures. So there are no identical frames of references. That means the encoder has no identical environment than the decoder. Decoder is in a different environment. It might be 98% similar, but still there are these 2% that make the frames of references not being alike. So one important principle is that there are no identical frames of references. Next principle also exists that when we have, and it actually builds on this first principle, and it's that if there are no identical frames of references, then whatever information is sent through the frames of references will not be the same. I mean, if you input something and then the final result, the final output will certainly not be 100% similar to what you input. Why? Because the frames of references are not the same. They are not identical. There will always be inevitably a loss of information. Just imagine a hierarchy of different corporate structure. Imagine that information goes from the general director to the associate director, then to the foreman, then to the workers, and if we were to measure, actually it has been measured several times in several studies, that the amount of information that is lost as the information travels through a hierarchical model from the person 1 through different levels of communication to person, let's say, 8 or 9, actually shows a considerable number or a considerable amount of loss. That information becomes maybe more simplistic, becomes less precise, becomes distorted, becomes fabulated, and this is because it passes through a lot of frames of references, and each frame of reference is different. So there are no identical frames of references, and 100% communication is never possible. Even if you are twins, even if you've lived with your wife for 50 years, which is quite uncommon these days, but even if something like this happens, even if you've lived all your life with somebody at your side, 100% communication simply is not possible. And I've just explained you the reasons why